Hey Zwifters, I'm Simon Schofield and this is the Zwiftcast coming up on this episode. Zwift CEO Eric Min talks to the Zwiftcast and outlines the post-pandemic direction for the company. Rowing is pulled for now. Prices aren't moving for now. And the new buzzword is easy. The three of us are all over the latest from Eric like a cheap suit. Stay tuned for our analysis. Plus, after the elastic snapped on our Pacerbot pals, breaking news, it looks like Coco Dan and the gang are back. Well, it's been a little while, but I shall explain why shortly. Happily, both my fellow Zwiftcasters are in position. They're cautious souls who would never raise their arms in celebration until they were certain they'd crossed the line first. Shane, g'day, mate. I'm sure you've never done a Lulu, as it shall now be known. You testers, you calculate your efforts so minutely, I doubt you'd even have the energy left to raise even a smile as you cross the line.
Yeah, that was a little awkward to see, wasn't it? No, thankfully, if I was ever contesting a win that close, I usually have my nose pointed to the ground and my saddle somewhere up around my chest, throwing the bike forward. Definitely not throwing my arms up in the air unless I really knew I had the win. But look, I would have loved to see someone create a meme saying that Lulu he just rode the whole race with his arms up in the air, celebrating his world's win. And it was great to see him come second with his arms up. Cycling always throws us something weird.
I mean, it was a silly thing to do. It's always a silly thing to do. And I can't believe that any cyclist would still do it. You know, the smart ones always just look over the shoulder. But there's a lot of love for Lulu, so I think he kind of got away with it. And Nathan Guerra, yo, dude, let's just get this out of the way right at the top now, shall we? Even though it's such old news now, but you did call the winner of the tour on the last Zwiftcast. You may bask briefly in your genius before giving us your tip for the Giro, so we can all go out and put £1 on your prescience with our local bookmaker.
Well, first of all, it's not like this was, at the final week of the tour. We asked this question like 2 or 3 days in. I mean,
yeah, no, it's true.
Podgy wasn't even like on anybody's radar, so I don't know.
That's enough basking. Who's going to win the Giro?
I have no idea. To be honest, all I know about is the Zwift Racing League nowadays. To be totally honest with you, I am. It's kind of nonstop over here. So
yeah, well, we'll get to that later in the app. I don't think it's going to be Geraint Thomas, that's for sure. Anyway, let's get on with stuff, because we have stuff to get on with. Whilst the search parties were out combing Watopia for Coco, Cadence and Diesel Dan, I was busy trying to nail down Zwift CEO Eric Min for an interview. After a little back and forth and a tiny bit of shilly and a little shally, we actually got it set up, but it's a couple of weeks, hence the slightly late arrival of episode 90. Now, I should make clear, this is not the annual Minterview where I try to cover 1 million topics with Eric. It's more of a mini interview. See what I did there? On matters arising from the Series C funding round, which, as we now know, raised $450 million and was a huge landmark moment in the history of the company. So it was a good time to talk to Eric and a good time to kind of focus discussion around what this flood of money may mean for subscribers. And in particular, as you'll hear, I wanted to talk to him about the difference between how new subscribers and existing subscribers might end up being treated. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to split the interview into 2 parts, and we will, as we like to do, parse what Eric said afterwards. So here's part 1. Well, welcome to the Zwiftcast to Eric Min. Hello, Eric.
Hi, Simon. Good to hear your voice again.
Well, listen, welcome and hello, and thanks for doing this. We're here really to talk about the latest funding round for Zwift and what changes subscribers can expect to see as a result of that as we head into a new indoor season. Early October, indoor season's about to kick off for real. But before we do any of that, Eric, it would be wrong of me not to congratulate you. Zwift, whether or not you think the label has any value, is now a tech unicorn. That's a company with $1 billion valuation. Don't be modest, Eric. That is some achievement.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a big accomplishment for our team. But when you go out and raise money or capital from investors, it's like taking out a huge mortgage, right? You do have to pay it back. So the amount of capital that you raise have to match your ambitions. And so we have big ambitions. We have a lot of work to do. We have this is a journey that we set out 6 years ago. We still feel like this is still very early in terms of what our business might mean for the category and the at-home fitness category that I think is really developing.
Raising money is never incredibly easy, even when you've got a fantastic proposition. But I understand that there were people knocking on your door rather than the other way around for this funding round. Is that broadly right?
No, that's true. We had a number of investors chasing us, and I think a lot of it has to do with many of the investors actually using the product and understanding what we're trying to build. That's that's always been the thing for me. I've never taken money from an investor who's not actually a customer of our service.
Okay. Well, look, we are going to pitch into some specifics about what this new investment round means specifically to subscribers, because that was how we set the basis of this interview up. But before we do that, I would just like to get some wider context. We met last February. 5 weeks later, the world shut down and everything changed. What has changed at Zwift as a company, and how has that changed the plans you had in February for what subscribers could have expected and received in 2020, well, at least up to date?
No one expected the pandemic to hit. Usually, come April, this is when we start to take a little breather and start planning for the next season. We need that block of time to do that. But with the pandemic, we were seeing hundreds of thousands of people coming to the platform and joining in numbers that we've never seen before. It was just, the traffic was insane. And so that caused us to change our plans. And we had to go in, sort of reactive mode. And the priority was to make sure that the platforms remained stable, and it did, which was, says a lot about the investment that we made over the previous couple of years. It was really about making sure that the new customers who are trying Zwift for the first time were having the best experience. So support went through the roof. There were all sorts of activity happening on the platform. And so, of course, that had an impact on some of the plans that we had around the product features, and UI release being, one of the ones that we had, I think publicly committed and communicated. So yeah, a lot has changed, and that also, affected our thinking around recruiting and the kind of plans that we need to put in place to support business that we think was going to grow, well past COVID. And so this is when we thought this is probably a good time for us to raise capital. We were planning to raise capital the following year, but we decided that given the current climate, the attention that we were getting as a business, along other internet businesses that were benefiting from this kind of the backdrop of COVID, we decided to go and raise capital that would sort of secure our future for years to come.
So to summarize, Eric, what COVID meant for you really was number one, dealing with floods of new subscribers in numbers the like of which you'd never seen before, and you also felt that this time was a good time to strike while the iron was hot and capitalize on the interest in home-based digital services. And the result of that, I guess, was that existing subscribers may have felt they were slightly at the back of the line. Is that fair?
I think that's a fair comment. There were features that we decided not to release because we felt that would be risky. And this is the UI project in particular. So we were actually pretty close to releasing that, and the plan was to release it in spring after the rush of the winter. But then when the second rush hit, we decided to just pull back on it and shelve it. And we got out of that craze over the following 2-3 months, and we went to revisit the project, and we thought we could do it better. We decided a slightly different strategy around the UI, and I think we went back to why did we build all the new features around the UI, and it's really to make it easier for the customer to discover features and functions and content, and that's still our core focus. You just don't need a brand new user interface for that. So we're looking at very specific things that we think will solve problems for 100% of our customers, not just new customers, but even for existing customers. So that's still the focus. And one thing that we are incredibly focused on, and the big theme of this capital raise is about making Zwift easier and more accessible to people, and that is the platform, the software, the game experience, the content, and the hardware that needs to go with it. All of that end-to-end experience has to be much easier for us to attract that broader audience who can't be fussed with all of the different pieces you might need to pull together today to get out Zwift. I think the first early adopters love that stuff. The customers that we're seeing today, I would say, almost half of them are recreational cyclists, and they just can't be bothered. They want everything spoon-fed to them. And so the big thing for us is just let's make everything much easier for everyday Zwifters, but also the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of customers who are coming to Zwift.
Yeah. Well, that's incredibly useful context, I think, and I think it will help people to understand why certain things have happened and certain things may not have happened in the year to date. Let's get very specific on this capital raise. I'm sure Zwifters, existing subscribers, I speak for here, I think, will welcome the pledge to accelerate product feature development. I mean, you noted that yourself in the press release. What specifically is going to change to make that happen, Eric? And realistically, when will users start to see these benefits?
In order for us to scale the product feature set that we want to build, we need to think of things in terms of systems. We need to think of features in terms of tools. So we need to give toolkit to our community, and clubs is the perfect example of that. So the club functionality is a way for us to group smaller communities or tribes, allowing them to create content. What I mean by that is, designing workouts, make them private or public, and just giving that kind of control to the community. And so that is actively, happening. We are working with about 80 event promoters. It is, we're not going to solve the entire problem or the solution around clubs in the first iteration, but we'll have multiple iterations to get to a point where the community will really start taking control over how their events get administered. So that's just one example of how we need to think about feature sets that really help us to unlock the things that I think the community are asking for, which is just a little bit more control over how they use Zwift as a platform than just simply as
So in terms of thinking of development of features, is it unrealistic for Zwifters to expect, little gifts and little pleasures in every update when the CEO is saying, actually, we need to think about big overarching systems before we release little crowd-pleasing features? Again, is that fair, or is that a mischaracterization?
No, I think our job is to make sure that we balance those things. But we are focused on the bigger systems that I think the majority of our customers would benefit from. So that's how we think of how we prioritize features.
Because systems development inevitably will take longer.
It will take longer, but everything else is a short-term uplift and at the expense of some of the bigger projects that we want to do. But I think we'll always have a balance. I think the more recent feature set, I think, which has, from our data, is super positive, is around the pacer bots. And that is just a FutureWorks feature. The feedback has been incredibly positive. And I think that is something that is not a system today, but we can turn that into a system. And it can go in so many different directions, because those pacer bots today are not intelligent, but they could be in the future.
Yeah. So again, to summarize, we will get these little crowd pleasers, but in the background, there's a serious amount of heavy lifting to be done to design systems that put the platform in a fit state for the next 5, 8, 10 years. Is that a fair description?
That is a fair comment. So we have a number of different systems that we have in mind that we want to build. I mean, categorization is another one. That's a system. That is not a small feature set. But that categorization system benefits the entire audience, right? Whereas, anti-sandbagging is a feature that we've had actually since April. We've been testing it in limited events. We know it works, and we want to roll that out as part of Clubbed. But that is still a short-term solution to a much larger, more sophisticated categorization system.
Okay, I get that. I understand the thinking, and I think the more smart Zwifters will understand that kind of thinking. Just related to this, Eric, and we are really here talking about what change is going to happen as a result of the investment, the new investment. How significant is the appointment to the board of Ilkkaa Paanen, who has obviously got an impeccable gaming background? His company's put money in, and he's got a seat on the board. What difference will that make?
Having someone like Ilkkaa on our board giving us advice is just is incredible for Zwift. I mean, his wealth of knowledge and experience in scaling games, and in his case making games that are very addictive. We like that. In the context of fitness, we think it's incredibly powerful. So he also has a philosophy around allowing smaller teams to be really creative and empowering our developers to come up with really creative solutions for the game that they believe in. These are some of the things that we want to learn from him. And he's just a fan of sports and gaming, and Zwift just represents like the perfect marriage between those two passions. So to have someone like that on the board giving us advice, a steer on strategic decisions around how we develop our product, I think is enormously beneficial for Zwift and the community. Having someone like him buying into and believing in our business gives us a lot of credibility when we go out and look for talent. So that's another important aspect. And then that is another theme of the Series C that we did is to give talent confidence in the business that we're building. And guess what? That helps to attract more talent.
Let's go through what I think are 3 main points that it may be instructive for us to talk about. Firstly, I think this had already begun to happen, actually, but the pandemic accelerated, as it has done in so many areas of life, something that was already happening. And that is that Zwift is now going to be very, very highly focused on simplifying the product to make it easier for new users. I almost lost count, Shane, of the times that Eric used the word easy or easier. Now, to be fair, you've been saying this for a while. Peloton is easy. Zwift can be difficult.
Zwifting ain't easy. It's also one of the reasons why I do a ton of content around Zwift, because people are looking for help. They're looking for information. They're looking to figure out how things work. But look, it's not just Zwift either. It's about everything with indoor cycling. It's really not that easy. You've got a bike, a smart trainer, a power meter, a computer, and they're all from different companies. So indoor training companies also have to support all of that, and trying to upskill someone who's just new to cycling and who wants to get on Zwift and learn about the new current technology, it's hard to do. The thing about Peloton, though, is they own that entire user experience, and that's clearly where Zwift need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I know they've known this for a while, but I think the thing that probably really hammered it home was this like massive flood of new subscribers. And as Eric said there, support, what he didn't say support was overwhelmed, but he said, I can't remember the exact words he used, but calls to support were many.
Yeah, it all comes down to, again, it's about how easy the system is to get up and running. I mean, if you take a fresh, a Greenfields customer who walks into a bike store and says, I want to get on Zwift, I've seen it on television, I want all of that. And I think we all can admit it's all too hard. So I'm keen to see what they got up their sleeve. And there's a few things we'll be talking about in this episode, which I think might get us a little step closer to that.
Let's move on to the next topic. In very broad terms, product development is now going to be seen in terms of systems rather than individual features. Eric was very clear on that. He cited club functionality and the now abandoned but due to be rethought new UI and categorization of races as good examples of a system rather than just like a little new feature. Shane, whilst this patient building of an ecosystem that's going to last for years and probably serve the company and subscribers very well eventually, I must confess my heart kind of hit my boots a bit when I heard this. Systems take ages.
Yeah. The definition, I guess we need a little bit more information about what they're talking about. Look, I'm going to go with that means a modular development and deployment process. And then jumping ahead on that, is the underlying architecture of Zwift able to support this? We've seen some features such as the fence that has come and gone and come back, and then pacer bots, they come and went and they returned again, and then broken route badges, and the list goes on. It's quite long. But stepping back from that, I think that's all about how they manage the development and deployment process. And based on the previous interviews, it's clear to see this is a sticking point for them. There's a lot of delays there. I won't rattle off my list of things we're waiting for that have been spoken about, but hopefully compartmentalizing all of this putting them in little buckets and deploying them won't impact other things. We've seen, the route badge breaking, something else rolled out and that broke route badges. Something else rolled out and broke something else. Something else rolled out and broke the fence. Hopefully, if they can contain these things, we can get people working on certain things, and it's a good experience. But it all comes back to the architecture of the original design.
Nathan, as a gaming veteran, do you recognise this kind of, it means nothing to me, but do you recognise this differentiation between a system and a feature?
Yeah, I think a feature a lot of times is like a little add-on that I'm trying to think of, like, a new feature could be a new skin, a way of interacting with a weapon in game, a way of interacting with a specific item in game, a new bike that we just recently saw Zwift Insider do a thing about. That's a feature, right? That's or even a new workout mode might be a feature, whereas an entirely new workouts system, and how we do workouts in general, how we interact with workouts in general completely, and how we even get to them and how they are downloaded or uploaded, vice versa, that's a whole new system, right? So like, I think that when we talk about game modes, maybe, and how we interact with the whole mode and how it's built from the ground up might be more of where we're heading in that respect, like, a whole new system, if I compared it, would be, I'm used to playing Apex as a 3v3 situation or three-man team situation. We drop in, and now all of a sudden it's like we don't drop into a whole map. We drop into just like a smaller space where we respawn over and over again, and you don't just die and you're out. Like, that's a whole new system, right? Like, so I wonder what they're thinking about there, though, when it comes to cycling and Zwifting and that's really intriguing, because new systems do mean new ways of interacting with a game a lot of times that can be more intriguing and have more strategy or more things to play, so I that's really encouraging to hear, actually. I really like it.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the story behind the now abandoned UI. And it's probably a good time to say what I know about this now, because Well, it's history now. I mean, the UI that we were going to get, we're now not getting. So I think I can probably spill some beans. And it's a really interesting phenomenon, how this whole new UI thing came along, because it was never, ever, ever anything than a new, or certainly the first iteration, a new UI for Apple TV users. And a lot of it was to get around the appalling hideousness of the Apple TV remote, which anybody who's ever used it instantly hates. And I actually saw the new UI because we had an interview ready to go when the new UI was to be launched. And when I saw it, I thought, that is really going to disappoint very, very large sections of the community because of expectations, and those expectations had kind of been allowed to arise and develop in the absence of information, really, and that's how expectations. They just roll down the hill like a snowball, gathering pace. And if nobody's putting out accurate information to prevent the snowball getting any bigger, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when it arrives, everyone says, well, that's not the snowball that I was expecting. So I think pulling the UI is actually the right call. And whether it's bound up with this whole idea of now developing in systems is something we're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, okay, well, that's what I know about the new UI. What's the new UI now? Finally, and I'll stick with you, Nathan, for the time being on this. A very significant new investor and advisor is Ilkkaa Paanen, the guy who heads up a games company called Supercell. Their biggest game was Clash of the Clans. He's obviously an extremely successful guy, a proper big noise in gaming. He'll bring two things, said Eric. First is strategic advice, and secondly, the ability to attract top games talent to Zwift. Nathan, that second point is really interesting, isn't it? A lot of this is about building the credibility of Zwift as a games company, which will allow them to attract talent.
We're talking about the area of gaming that's absolutely blowing up the most in the world right now, which is in the mobile space. And that's where Paanen's coming from. And having a little bit of muscle to be like, hey, what are you guys doing over here? Like, what about this, and this? And having some top-down like strategy in that space to help and push along development, I think is a really, really good thing, because my take is a lot of this has been focused for the longest time on serving the core, which is the people who were looking at a wall and needed something else to look at. We're getting beyond that to the user who needs to have ease and fun, right? Ease and fun. And it's super exciting for me to see that. And then on top of that, being taken more seriously in a space to get more talent. You have one of the most successful, obviously in the gaming space right now, a very fast growing, jumping in. And I think that's going to have, like Eric kept on saying, attracting more talent.
Well, it was interesting that the word that Eric used in that first part of the interview about Ilkkaa's skills were I think the phrase he said was he knows how addictive games can be. Now, addictive in a gaming context is sometimes seen as negative, and certainly in a kind of social media or screen attraction context, addictive is seen as a bad thing. Of course, having an addiction to something that makes you fitter is and more active is not a bad thing. It's the direct opposite. So, yeah, really interesting. Okay, we'll have more from Eric in part 2 of the chat. We talk about rowing and why it has for now been pulled. We talk about pricing, we talk about Zwift's hardware division, as I mentioned, and we talk about copycats. But now let's talk about what will be the first iteration of what will eventually morph into a system, one of those systems, and that is Zwift Racing League. For all the minutiae of how this team-based league, produced in association with WRTL, will actually work, I would direct you towards Zwift Insider, which does all that detailed stuff really, really well. But I wanted a more general overview, so I whistled up Zwift's Jacob Fraser, who's been a big part of the team developing the league. Well, welcome to the Zwiftcast to Jacob Fraser from Zwift. Jacob, let's make one thing happen. Let's make your mum happy, which I know we always do when you get on the Zwiftcast, by telling us your title.
Well, my title is still Senior Brand Experience Manager. We haven't made the change, but I work on the esports side of things now. So let's call it Assistant Esports Race Guy. I just made that up now. I hope my boss isn't listening to it.
No, I like that. Well, at least it says what it is. I mean, your role has changed somewhat since the world went crazy, obviously, because you used to be the man who acquired, I reckon, easily the most frequent flyer points in Zwift, because you went all over the place doing all kinds of things at Zwift in live events. But now you switched to kind of masterminding. I'll use that word; it'll make your mum happy. The new Zwift Racing League. So, Jacob, I don't know whether still people do have elevator pitches, but yeah, I want the elevator pitch, mate. What is the Zwift Racing League? You've got under a minute.
The Zwift Racing League is designed to bring the racing community together, answer kind of a long-standing question within that racing community of a multi-week season that any team can participate in at every level, in any time zone, any region around the world, to race against other teams into a league structure. So that's what we've tried to get out the door in this season 1, and hopefully we can continue to iterate over multiple seasons throughout the calendar year. But on its surface, it's a league that anybody can participate in at any level in any region around the world to have fun, friendly racing every week.
And endorsed by Zwift, but indeed organised by WRTL. I think you've kind of partnered with them because they've been really successful with their Team Time Trial series, and these guys seem to know what they're doing when it comes to organisation. Not that I'm saying you don't, Jacob, but I mean, this partnership obviously is going to be beneficial for getting something going pretty quick.
Yeah, the WTRL partnership is pretty critical in this first season and in seasons to come. Like you said, they're an expert in the community. Their Team Time Trial format and race series have been fantastic. We participate in it, as staff members of Zwift every week as well. We have a couple of teams and some friendly competition within our company. And they have a great organization put together over there. So it made a ton of sense to get them involved at the very beginning, take some of their expertise within the community and also their organizational skill. Like you said, they're extremely well organized. They're a well-oiled machine with a ton of knowledge. And as we brought Zwift Power within the Zwift ecosystem, there's, let's call it some hiccups in the road. I'm sure people on the internet might disagree with that word, but as Zwift Power gets spun up on our own servers and things like that, we want to incorporate more of this into the game itself. But as we all know, that just takes time on the development side. And we wanted to get something together sooner to answer the needs of the community. And so the partnership with WTRL is pretty important just to get it out the door in this first season for sure.
Yeah. We're going to get to this in a minute about, racers' personalities and how challenging it can be to meet their many needs. But I mean, running something like this, particularly now it's got the big Z orange stamp of approval, even if WRTL are doing like a lot of the kind of donkey work behind the scenes, that obviously brings with it a certain responsibility. How do you see the kind of balance between HQ and WRTL working?
Yeah, I'm going to call you out there. It's WTRL, not WRTL.
Oh, I always get it wrong.
It's acronym.
We know what we're talking about.
Yeah, you hit it kind of right on the head. It is extremely labor intensive. Obviously, creating something new is always a challenge. Just getting, all of the ideas together and trying to answer the community as best we can with what we feel is, first of all, a successful league, a successful season 1, but also kind of a fully baked one. Obviously, there's always going to be room for iteration and growth in future seasons, and that's the idea here. And then the second aspect is making sure it works, right? We don't want to put together a season as great as it may be on the label that doesn't work. And that's where WTRL really comes in. Their organization and their machine kind of on the Team Time Trial side has proven its efficiency and its stability. So it is a true partnership in the way I see it. We've worked together on pretty much every aspect of the league, from what the point structure is going to be, the course selection, the time zones, the race times. Really, everything has been a true partnership, and the guys over at WTRL are absolutely fantastic.
Jacob, again, just this kind of orange seal of approval, and probably, you bring much greater marketing weight than the good guys at WTRL could ever hope to have done. Do you think that those two factors are basically going to increase racer participation? And I'm talking about from the bottom up here, from people who may never have thought of racing before. Do you expect to see a big flood of those come in?
It's a super interesting question, Simon, for sure. The short answer is yes, but I think it's worth exploring that racer participation or the name racer as it stands, right? We identify this massive group of Zwifters as what we call internally competitive Zwifters. I myself fall into that category. If I'm riding up the hilly KOM in Watopia, for example, and somebody comes up next to me, I'm going to go a little bit harder than I plan to make sure that person doesn't beat me, right? That makes me a competitive Zwifter. Now, to turn into a racer, in the current format, I have to jump all of the hurdles and navigate, how many different websites to get involved in Zwift racing. What we're trying to do with the Zwift Racing League is smooth that journey out. So season 1 is certainly going to focus on just kind of coalescing the already existing racing community, bringing them together, giving them team formats, giving them a league format that will have iterative seasons in the future. Like you said, the big, orange stamp of approval, if you will, but let's not ignore or undercut the following that people like WTRL have and things like that. In future seasons, I think what we'll see is a exponential growth of people coming to the platform to start racing. But in this first season, our focus is just to bring the whole racing community together.
Let's just move on to some of the slightly tricky areas around racing. I mean, let's face it, racers are difficult dogs to keep on the porch. They're demanding, competitive, type A folk. They complain about cheating. They complain about failure to enforce race categorization. I mean, can you begin to address those two things with Zwift Racing League?
Again, the short answer is yes. It's definitely a more complicated answer than that. And I think it's worth saying, right, the community has high expectations for the product across the board, and us as employees are no exception to that rule. I wish we could show the community some of the internal Slack conversations that happen. I race in the Eldo Crit series here in Southern California, for example, and I finally had a chance at winning the D category as a, back of the pack racer. There was a group of maybe 50 of us. And of course I get pipped on the line by what I would classify as a C category racer. So immediately I took to Slack and was all over the game engineers and everybody who has anything to do with racing. I was just furious in the moment that I lost a race, and everybody says, well, okay, go on Zwift Power. They're categorized different and all that. But we all know that feeling of it seeming unfair. And let's all remember, this is a very fun game that we all like to play indoors. The community expectations, though, are shared by our staff across the board. We all want more of everything. It's just a bandwidth problem. We have to do that work, and that takes time and takes people. So again, knowing that the racers have high expectations is good. It gives us something to strive for. And I just ask that, they give us a chance to go on that journey. It is a totally new product for us from a racing league perspective. WTRL is bringing a ton of expertise to the table. It will be better than anything we've done before. Will it be perfect? Certainly not. And we're going to iterate again season to season. This isn't going to be one 10-week season for the community and then it'll disappear. We're committing to this, and it will exist for the foreseeable future. And we want to continue to work on those things like cheating, like sandbagging. All of those things will come in time. Certainly, it's something we're actively working on.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one, actually, Chika, because if this is a kind of roaring success, it's obviously actually going to turn the volume up on those kind of gritting the oyster issues. And maybe, I mean, I'm not suggesting that the development guys and the game team are not listening, but maybe when they've got a loud hailer in their ear, they'll listen a bit harder. Yeah,
I think that's a fair thing to say. I mean, think of it from the company's perspective, right? And I certainly am part of that company, but looking at how our current user base identifies as racers are still by far and away a minority of the platform, right? Even WTRL gets fabulous numbers on their Thursday night team time trial, and I'm not undercutting that whatsoever. But when you look at it as a percentage of our total user base, it's a small number, right? Let's just say that. So as we grow the racing community, rightfully so, the business will have to prioritize it a little bit differently. If it becomes a larger percentage, a bigger segment of the user base, it becomes a higher priority. I think that's just simple business for anybody to understand. So again, that the word racers is so interesting to me here, in that how people identify as a racer, how we categorize racers within the platform, by giving a league system to the community that more people can participate in, that is easier to participate in. I think we're going to see the number of quote unquote racers just absolutely skyrocket, because again, so many people are competitive. Let's just give them an easy and a fair way to race. It's my favorite way to use the Zwift platform, right? A 30-minute crit race is by far and away the hardest workout I'll ever get for myself. So more people will start to race, thus being categorized as a racer, thus moving us up, I think, the priority list within the company. But that's for us to continue to, like you said, squeak the wheel a little bit to make sure that our needs are heard as well.
Jacob, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much, my friend.
Absolutely a pleasure, Simon. Always good chatting with you. Take care.
Right on.
Okay, back to the Eric Min interview. Let's get part two. I wanted to explore further the balance between keeping existing subscribers happy and making things easy for new subscribers. Eric, hardware development is expensive. I mean, I think that's just true. I mean, you're entering a world, of which you have little previous experience. TV advertising is expensive. Again, nobody, I don't think, would quibble with the benefit that brings. But these are two big, expensive pieces, and arguably the existing subscribers are not immediate beneficiaries of either. And again, I just want to go back to this idea of existing subscribers as a pretty key stakeholder in the business. I mean, to an extent, the community has certainly helped. They've not done it alone, but they've certainly helped you to get where you are now. How cognizant are you of that stakeholder group, the existing subscribers who see this stuff and say, well, oh yeah, it's all very good, but it doesn't really benefit me?
To that comment, I would say that, TV advertising and marketing is important for us to go outside of the bubble that we operate in to attract broader set of customers, which then feeds back into the market opportunity for Zwift, which then helps us to go and attract more capital, which then feeds back into the resources that we need to continue to build the business. I mean, I think if we just want to be a small company, that's a different strategy. But I think all of that, in the end, should be benefiting the existing customers, because it should give us, and we should have the resources to serve both existing and new. It's a balancing act always, but we certainly have the capital, and now we're trying to attract the human capital to make sure that happens.
But as a CEO, do you have front of mind that important stakeholder group of the people who've been around 3 or 4 years, maybe now, and arguably that set of people are perhaps the most impatient, often they're the most vocal. Again, we've talked about this often before, but do they remain an important stakeholder group for you? Do you consider their needs?
Every time I get on Zwift, I am a customer, and I run Zwift almost every day. And there are features that aren't working sometimes, and there are enhancements that we'd love to have. There are, these are things that run through my mind every time I get on Zwift, and so it's a balancing act. But absolutely, it is important for us to balance the set of features that benefit customers who've been with us a long time. What's fresh content for them, what's fresh feature set, and also having to make sure that the Zwift is something easy and simple for new customers to get onboarded. But we are absolutely thinking about feature set benefit the broader customer base, and not, I think the folks who might be upset might be a much smaller group asking for. I'll give you an example. There is a group of customers who might want to have very sophisticated analytics for performance. And while that feature set is interesting, it just doesn't serve the wider customer base. And there are tools out there that sit outside Zwift that can offer that. And so this is where we can say, okay, you know what, that would be nice to have, but it's probably not as important as making sure that new customers come through and find obvious things that may not be so obvious today.
A balancing act is a key phrase there, and I think again in that context, people will understand that. Let's move on to another kind of aspect of the capital raise. Series C moves Zwift possibly. I can't emphasize that word enough. Possibly, but in the classic path, it moves them one step closer, moves you one step closer, that either to an IPO or a buyout by a bigger player. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you're going to do next week, but the classic path, that's what would happen. And in this phase, it's not uncommon that revenues are lifted, and as much as possible, and the phrase that's often used is the company's fattened up for a sale either on the public markets or to a private buyer. What kind of assurances can you give the community, Eric, that, for example, price rises or micropayments or any of those things that might be construed as part of this fattening up process? What assurances can you give the community that that's not going to happen? I don't mean happen ever, but where are we in that area?
So we've retained the same price of $14.99 dollars since November 2017, and we've no plans to change that. There's a lot that we still need to do to improve the core product that would just benefit the value of the business. So that's not to say that prices won't move sometime in the future. It's not to say that there aren't customers who would pay more for certain features, right? But I think the base price of $14.99 is a good place to be. And the recent conjoint analysis that we did, I know got a lot of our customers excited about a potential or imminent price rise. That wasn't the case. That was all about understanding how our customers are valuing features. And the only way to do that is put a price tag on it. So these were all fictitious values, but it helped us to understand what the customers value the most. And so that insight is super important. And we surveyed not only those who are active on social media, but also those who are generally passive and don't go to social media. So we had a good enough sample size to tell us, okay, these are the areas that we need to focus on, and it really helps us to prioritize some things that we thought might have been more important. And one of the things that did come out of the survey was like, look, this is probably not a good time to roll out rowing. As much as there may be a small group of people who are just really excited about the rowing product. In fact, I think we need to focus on some other features that before pushing out rowing. Because guess what, rowing, which is a product that we have in alpha, I think it's going to be a huge hit when we're ready to release it. It will take up resources. It will take up resources that could be working on other things. So,
so the decision to hold back on that was a direct result of responses you got from the survey.
Yes.
Interesting.
So that's the value of the survey. It's data driven. It's telling us exactly what the customers value the most, and one of the things that they value immensely is just being able to discover content. Our content, I think, could benefit from how we surface what you can do in Zwift, rather than turning it into a egg hunt. Make it so easy for people to know these are the choice of things that you could do every time you log into Zwift. Simple things like that, which requires a lot of work, by the way.
Yeah. But back to price, because it's something that always gets people excited, always. And it would be madness for any business to say they are never ever going to touch prices. I mean, no business would ever say that. But in the short term, things are probably kind of status quo-ish, is what I'm hearing from you.
It is. We're pretty happy where it is. I think there's more feature set that we can pack into that price point. Do we, is there an opportunity to have a tier pricing or even in-game transactions? I think that's, we'll learn that from the customers. There are customers who can afford far more than $15. If we actually had something else to sell them. We don't at the moment, but what would that be? And these are things that, as a business, we need to discover.
Okay. All right. Again, another aspect of the capital raise, which is the reason we're talking, really. And again, I just want to thank you for coming and addressing some things that have been raised by the community directly. It's always great to hear them from the CEO. The introduction of Specialized as an investor and the big focus on hardware development in the announcements and the press releases and all the publicity that went around the capital raise, and a few other very legitimate factors around friction, which we've already spoken about, actually, drives one kind of inevitably to conclude that the first product from the Zwift hardware division must be a Zwift smart bike. What can you say, Eric?
Well, I can't say too much about the hardware that we're building. But I can tell you that we're not going to just build any hardware. We're going to build hardware that I think sets the bar pretty high. And I think that's going to be great for our customers because I think we are setting expectations around what that experience can be. And I think that's great for our partners who make hardware because, it's going to create ideas around how they can continue to invest in the hardware. So I think for the end consumer, at the end of the day, what they're going to get is just a better experience. So we want to just set the bar high in terms of what the end-to-end experience could be, and that includes the hardware piece. Our relationship with Specialized is a special one, and I think having Specialized invest in Zwift is a huge endorsement of indoor cycling and indoor training. It's a market that most of the endemic brands like Specialized and Trek and Giant aren't in. And I think it was just a matter of time that these brands are going to find this interesting.
I understand your reticence not to announce on the Zwiftcast what the first products of the Zwift hardware division will be. But just one final question on this. Are you on track time-wise? Are you where you want to be with hardware development?
It is, of course, you want to do it as fast as possible, but it takes time. And we've been working on this for a year now. So I would say we're on target. We'd like to bring it out as soon as possible. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised you leave it there. Okay, last one. It's probably not unfair to say that more than a few bugs have crept into the game. Many get fixed very quickly, but some don't. And again, this has kind of arisen in some areas of the community. Are there any plans at all, Eric, for what some might call a Zwift 2.0? In other words, would you ever consider completely rethinking or rewriting the game's whole engine, the code base, the whole way that Zwift works? Is that something that ever crosses your horizon?
I think there's we do have a small R&D team, and this team is meant to go out, of which John Mayfield is to think about those questions. I think we should be exploring that all the time. I mean, our current product is probably close to 10 years old, since John's first started as a home project to today. So there's a lot of work that we need to do, and a rewrite is a big undertaking for any company, but it has its merits, and that's something that we haven't considered at the moment. But exploring and asking the questions, that's what every company should be doing. So it's not a yes, it's not a no. It's let's just say that it's something that we should be considering as a number of options.
Interesting. Okay, last one, and I gave you no prior notice of this, so if you tell me I can't talk about that because I've already got my lawyers on it, I will fully understand. But Whoosh have kind of come from nowhere and appear to be a complete copycat of Zwift. How do you protect yourself against something like that?
Well, we're pretty comfortable with competition. We like competition. I think it validates the business that we're in. I think you need to have competitors to target. Whoosh is an interesting one because it was so blatantly a copy, because the art was copied as well, which is just I just couldn't believe that. But I'm not focused on Whoosh. We're not focused on Whoosh. We're focused on the tasks that we have in front of us, and I'm again just not really focused on the competitors that are actively in our space. We're really going after a much bigger prize, and so we're just staying really focused. And I think it's important for us to make sure that we're servicing the community. I mean, I think the community is what our focus should be in terms of growing and fostering and engaging, and that is I think that's the most valuable asset we have, is making sure that when you come on Zwift, you have an awesome 45-minute, 60-minute workout, with or without all the features that we've been talking about or customers are wanting. The question is, at the end of that 60-minute workout, did you have a good experience? That's what's most important for us.
Yeah, and it was easy. I think that again has been the message that's come across very clearly during this mini interview, I think we can call it. Eric, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and it's always a pleasure to get that perspective that you're able to give that may cause some people who seem to have a kind of knee-jerk criticism of the kind of things that Zwift do to think, well, maybe if I was wearing their shoes, I might think about some of those things too. And I do think your interviews and the detail you provide and the perspective you provide on that is incredibly valuable. Thank you very much again for your time. You interrupted your Saturday to do this, so I'm very grateful. Thank you, Eric. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Simon.
Okay, guys. Well, I guess people are interested in pricing. Of course they are. And some people, not enough by the sounds of it, are interested in the launch of rowing. Shane, the much maligned survey that caused such a fuss, Zwift clearly listened to what people were saying. We didn't see the findings, of course, so we don't know whether they listened to every message that came out of the survey. But what message they clearly listened to was, now is not a good time to launch rowing, as Eric said. It's not cancelled, far from it, but it's not prioritised. What I was hearing in that Eric chat was that we're not going to see it that soon. And that's a direct result of the findings from the survey. Interesting, eh?
Yeah, look, I was a lucky non-recipient of the survey, but it was very clear that people were unhappy with the survey. People were even going as far as coming up with fictitious scenarios and then getting angry at those scenarios that they'd made up, such as Zwift have micropayments, god damn it, Zwift, or Zwift are not going to support non-Zwift hardware. Look, until the changes are confirmed, I've got 99 problems, and this ain't one of them, to be honest.
Yeah. But are you aligned to? It was quite a big decision to say we're not pushing ahead with rowing at the moment. Do you think that's good call?
They may have done a bit of market surveying and find out how popular rowing is not. Maybe. Look, we look at the numbers for running. There's a number of people running, but there are not hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people running. Rowing? Is there going to be tens of people rowing? It depends how much effort you've got to put into something like that. I mean, the world is built. The reality is there. There's virtual gravity, virtual trees, virtual birds, virtual blues, virtual water. It's all there. It depends how much effort they've got to put in and how much that's going to take away with the limited resources from the other product. So it could be a timing thing. I agree it needs to be there, but so does virtual golf. I love playing Wii golf. That needs to be on Zwift. I want to jump off the bike and putt a little ball around and have a bit of fun. It needs to be a virtual sports platform or a virtual fitness platform, which Eric has spoken about. So rowing in particular could be indicative of bigger things. We'll see.
Yeah, well, we hear Eric use the P word a lot, priorities, and they've clearly used the survey results to establish that this is not a priority for the broad mass of Zwifters. So it probably is the right call. Sorry, Rose, don't mean to upset you, but looks like that decision has been taken. Nathan, pricing ain't moving upwards in the foreseeable, but never say never. I mean, that's a very sensible answer, and one I think they'll be largely welcomed. But Eric didn't rule out tiered pricing. In fact, he raised it. I think that means pay more, get more. And he didn't rule out in-game transactions. The problem I think I heard from him was that even though there's a willingness among some customers perhaps to pay more, Zwift is just not yet in a position to deliver more.
I don't know how, the only structures I can think of where there's some sort of payment like that's happening is like, in a new season of some game that I'm playing, I can pay an extra $15 and get like faster levels and get access to new skins and stuff like that. They don't necessarily give me an advantage. I just get new cool stuff quicker and new unlocks quicker, or new, like, maybe go to a new game mode a little bit quicker because I can only earn that by leveling up. So, and I just don't know if like the deliverables are that, are there quick enough. And then on the other hand of it too, you have to think about, is the base game broad enough and satisfying enough to where the user who's paying the regular premium is going to feel okay about that extra being there still. And so if that isn't satisfying enough, because like some people, I'm fine. I'm not going to pay the extra 15 to, get these extra skins or whatever, because I'm happy enough with what's right here. But then it's like, if to get the premium actual game, I have to pay more, that wouldn't feel good at all, So there just is maybe not enough of a platform for the regular user to stand on. And then on top of that, how fast can you get deliverables to even be pumping out that product all the time if we're just stuck at level 50 for 2 years, or whatever that might look like. So,
well, tiered pricing is notoriously difficult to get right, as our friend Strava demonstrated pretty comprehensively over the last few years. Shane, if there was, name one thing you'd pay extra for. I mean, it could be anything, so put one thing in the game that you would be prepared to pay more for, and how much?
Performance analytics, tracking my fitness over time, and a better workout editor focusing on exactly that, better performance.
Right. So in other words,
jumping ahead in the show notes a little further, but yes.
In other words, Training Peaks functionality, you'd pay a little bit more for that to be within Zwift.
Absolutely. That way, if I could then take away my subscription to either Training Peaks or Today's Plan or Strava, and there's analytics that I get from that, it's going to save me money. So if it was only a $5 extra, it's going to save me $7 a month elsewhere. So it's a net gain.
Yeah. And it was interesting, wasn't it, that Eric highlighted actually more sophisticated performance analysis as one of those things that could be done, but at the moment doesn't interest enough people. Are you being a bit blinkered there because it's something you want?
No, absolutely not. Look, Eric mentions there that it's a very small subset of customers, I think, who want to track performance analytics. And then he states it's not a priority for them, as we heard. And they're happy to handball that off to other services such as Strava and Training Peaks and Today's Plan. But look, I wonder how many people have connected their Zwift accounts to Strava or other third-party services. I think almost everyone I know on Zwift already does that. Yeah. So I suspect most of the Zwiftcast listeners have done that too. So I wouldn't call that a small subset. Look, that's why we're training. We want to track how we're improving over time. That's why we train. And that's both indoors and out. So there's talk about making the experience easier, but farming off users again to another third-party site is not easier for the user. That's easier for Zwift.
Yeah, well, that's a decent point, actually. And I think you're right. Whether it's an indoor or an outdoor ride, I upload it to Strava, and then I head off to Training Peaks to see whether it's moved the dial on my longer term numbers. I'm not a particularly enthusiastic trainer.
My question would be, so are you paying?
I don't think I'm alone doing that. Go ahead, Nathan.
my question would be, are you paying for Training Peaks? Are you paying for Strava? And
yeah, both. Yeah.
if you are, okay, then there's maybe money to be made there. My experience with the deeper analytics in the gaming sphere. Now, then Shane's right to say, well, this isn't just a gaming sphere, but my experience there is that for the more super user, I would call, if I'm in Eric's mind of what I heard there, it's like we're onboarding so many people right now that are not in that space so much, and we have more of like your weekend warrior just trying to get fit person that's not as interested there, and we have more people maybe that aren't as interested in Strava and etc. That these people, they want to make sure are sticking around and getting more of their friends involved. They're trying to go mass market at this point. So those users, the guys who are looking up Apex stats after my game. So I know I keep on going back to that because it's the most recent competitive game that I played to try and be at a very top level. I'm going to a third-party website to see where I rank against the top guys that I just fought against to look up their name, right? And I'm not looking at that in the game. I might have a rank in game that tells me like in general where I stand. But if I want to go and see what the specific stats are and all that stuff, it's not in the game itself. And I feel like they're moving toward being the game service product more rather than that other side of things. That's what is super user to the mass public. Whereas like a very much smaller niche is your just training platform software, which is just, there's already other competitors out there that do all that. And maybe that's not what Zwift is focused on.
I think what the message I clearly got, and that, this is not a new thing, Shane. I mean, we've been talking about this probably for the last couple of years or more. They've hoovered up all the nerds now. They've got all the bike nerds, and they do probably just enough to keep the bike nerds happy. They now need to start shining their spotlight on the non-nerds and the non kind of serious road cyclists. I don't mean to demean a section of the cycling community. I love anybody who puts their bum on a saddle. But the recreational, the newbies, we've got the nerds. Now we need to think about the noobs. I do think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, look, you can overanalyze your performance and your statistics and things like that, but you can also simplify that, such as what distance did I ride this week? What did I ride last week? What did I ride last month? What did I ride last year? And those statistics over time can be simplified. Just call it Zwift points. And this month you've earned this many Zwift points or that many Zwift points or even XP or even drops or something like that. Again, about this getting people addicted to the system. This is the avenue for that, for sure. It's about, because what else is there? There's stats. There's nothing else. I guess there's, to a point, Zwift Power could be used for this, for performance tracking. I mean, if they're recording all the data now, Zwift Power is in-house. No longer there's the GDPR issue and things like that. People should be signed up to it. Once you sign up to Zwift. They could probably just fork that off or, I guess, take a part of that in a different direction. But it all comes down to data too. Now, as a billion-dollar company, Strava are drinking from the fire hose. Strava know everything about Zwift and everything about Zwifters, because if you're pumping that data to a third-party service, that's getting scary. You got people coming along with a lot of money and people, they want to control that data. I mean, look at how every other big company works. Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. I mean, look at the concerns around TikTok and where that's based. Zwift are handing out their data. They're just giving their data away to everyone. But the user is choosing to do that. There's got to be some concern there from these new investors coming along going, okay, right, this is our IP, like our users on this platform, all our statistics. Oh, what, we're sending these to all these other companies? Oh. Now, if that goes up to Garmin Connect, and then Garmin now own Tax have their own training software. The data side of thing concerns me.
Well, it's an interesting
but coming back to
it's an interesting point because simultaneously they're giving away the data, but they're also retaining it. Of course, they're not.
Of course, they are.
I mean, it stays on the Zwift servers, and one fine day when you can see your entire Zwift history in a nice, VeloViewer style poster that goes on your.
There's a good example.
Facebook, whatever. So I guess my point is, your point is they're giving it away. My point is not yes, they are giving it away, but they're also keeping it for the day that dawns when they can actually do something useful with it to the average Zwifter.
I hope so. I hope they really do something useful with that, including things such as your own personal pacer bots that you can race yourself from 3 years ago because they've got that data, or you can chase yourself from last week or 2 weeks ago, or you can then replicate a ride that you've just done as a bunch or something like that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've got the data for sure. Very complex though.
Yeah, for sure.
Do I get to say what I'd pay for? Do I get to?
The little voice at the back of the class there. Of course you do, Nathan. What would you pay for?
So one thing that I've said over and over again about free-to-play games that I've been involved with, where somebody comes in and they're obviously using a bot to cheat, and they just wipe the floor with my whole squad, and we're all just swearing and like mad and like whatever, this game sucks. And I've said over and over again about those. Just make us pay for it. They can't just make another thing after they're banned. Just make us pay for it. I've said that so many times. Can we just pay for this game, and then they can't just remake an account after they're banned? And you know what I'm getting at here. In the competitive space, I would definitely pay for no cheaters. I would definitely pay 100% to have for a fully committed situation. And I think we're starting to see that develop. I think Zwift Racing League and some things like that are starting to try and go down that avenue. But, I would, and then the other thing we're going to get to it in a little bit here, but I'm just going to say 2.0. I would definitely pay for that as well. I would definitely pay for that as well.
Leaping ahead on the script, I think that's a really intriguing thought, though, that first thought of yours, that you're going to pay for a clean racing space. So, you stick $5 a month on your subscription, and that entire money, if enough people pay it, that's like a fund, it's an anti-cheater fund. That's a we go and find the cheaters and throw them out of the race fund, which I can see that working. That was quite appealing to me, that. Okay, well, let's, you leapt ahead there, Nathan. Let's just deal with this last point from the Eric chat, this idea of Zwift 2.0 that's kind of emerged in some of the more nerdy corners of the Zwift community. And that's the idea that the whole code base of the game, is the whole game engine, might be due a complete overhaul, particularly in light of some of the bugs we've seen in recent releases. Eric didn't say yes, he didn't say no, but I did get the impression it wasn't exactly top of the to-do list, didn't you, Nathan? Which
is really odd to me. Yes, I did. Well, I felt like it was coy. I felt like it was kind of, I'm just not going to tell you, here's for me. I was actually talking about this with my dad actually today. I was talking about Zwift and how it's doing and everything. And I pointed at my old Windstar from 2000 and I said, you want to put a nav system on that? You got to put a satellite on top of the freaking thing, and you're walking around with this satellite on top of it to get the Wi-Fi in, blah, 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 blah. You look at this other vehicle over here from 2019, it's got a nav system on a little chip, like tiny little chip and Wi-Fi and a reverse camera and all that. You want to put a reverse camera on this? You got to put a GoPro on it and then somehow get a screen in there and put the screen somewhere a bit off of some Duracell battery. And that's what's happening, I think, right now with Zwift, is all the add-ons that you have to do off of it. I think you said it's 10 years old or something along those lines, maybe, or more. I don't know what it's, the engine and everything it's running off of. But the reality is, if you do the vehicle analogy and the vehicle we're currently running on, it seems to me that you're having to put satellites and GoPros and whatever that are just not made for cars
on an old
and
chassis.
You could just, I don't know exactly. And why don't we just buy the new thing? And right now, in my opinion, Zwift is at a place where they could sit on their product for a year. Just leave it as is and put everybody on a new thing, and it would be just fine. Nobody would go anywhere, and boom, release a 2.0 in a year from now. And it would be, or maybe, I don't know how long it would. I mean, if everybody just muscled up and just focused on that and left the product as is, people would be happy if 2.0 were on the way, in my opinion. So if everyone's happy with a new car, right? Like a new car, especially if you're on a 2000, whatever car, like a car that's like way back, and then you get the nice shiny new thing that's like just released last year, you're going to feel like you feel like $1 million. And think about being
It's
on
the
the
smell.
newest
It's the new car
DirectX.
smell.
Yeah.
Think about being on the newest DirectX or the newest Unreal Engine compared to what it would be absolutely amazing. People would flip out. So that's my yay. I would pay for 2.0 right there.
Yeah, no. Things do move on. It's true. I mean, sometimes I buy new household appliances and I say to my wife, "Gosh, things have come along, haven't they, since we last bought that?" Things do improve exponentially. Shane, I got the impression again from Eric that this was not, as I said, top of the to-do list. Did you get that impression?
It's a big task. A lot of code is spoken about in millions of lines of code. I'm guessing Zwift is right up there in a few million lines of code, if not more. So it's a big rewrite. However, if it's going to stop the delays, such as did we speak about clubs or teams over a year ago or so? Was that sort of on the horizon then? And the little things that just seem to be failing and falling over. And looping back to what we spoke about earlier on, is it the architecture that's failing here? And could you make something more modular to plug things into? Quite possibly. It's like I'll go back to a power meter analogy. The Shimano-based power meters that many companies use, there's a crank that was made and then people started slapping strain gauges on the side and calling it a power meter. It works great for the left side, for the right side, not so much because it was never designed to be a power meter. Yeah. I'm sure Shimano going back to basics, building a power meter and then building a crank around that, and then that's going to be power meter 2.0. Zwift, I see a little bit of the same. Racing, I mean, we used to, start at the Jarvis tree and hit go at this exact time, and the results were never posted anywhere, or they were sort of sniffed off the wire. It was never built for that. It's still the same engine. I guess it's being built on, but in that, things get very, very complex. And anybody in IT and IT systems who have had to administer anything or upgrade anything that's been built on, it gets very difficult to the point of no return. And it has to be started from scratch. I would love to see 2.0. Absolutely love to see it. We look at Grand Theft Auto 5. We've been riding around with that as a bit of a toy. The graphics are amazing, and people love that. Even though the graphics don't hook you in and leave you hooked in, it's about the gameplay and the experience and everything around that. However, it is leaps and bounds ahead. And with what can be done with a new engine, we'll see. Even if it's just a significant refresh of what they currently have, maybe not a complete rewrite, but.
Yeah, I want to jump on the back of and really hammer on the point that Shane made too, that not just from a user experience, but also a dev experience point of view, I would think that when you start fresh like that and you build up front with being able to plug and play so much more development stuff, think about how much quicker the users could be served too if it wasn't so much like you're saying, going back into old architect. I mean, I'm just thinking about ripping out walls here with plaster and how much I got to do in this old 1902 house I got here versus if I just had drywall up, pull that out and put a new piece. I think that there's a certain amount of reality of, in order to get new features out, some of the holdup on new features also might have to do with what they're having to work with on that architecture. And so starting from scratch with, like you said, Shane, they're modular and being able to plug and play so much more, because the gaming world has that's already in its, I've watched some of the new DirectX stuff and some of the new Unreal Engine stuff on their releases and was so impressed with how much was already built into the engine for developers to walk in and just be like, we just place a couple of this in here and bam, it does that thing to interact with itself. It just knows what to do with what you want to do with it. So whereas when you're building from the ground up and, from very, very old, you had to write so much more just to get one little thing done. So I think that there's a lot of speed up that could happen on that. So again, I'm beating it, I'm harping this over and over and over again, but I really think there's a lot of advantage though.
Well, we don't know. We don't know what goes on inside, but we do.
We don't know.
But we do see the results, and there are some objective facts, like this is built on something that certainly started. Clearly it's developed since then, but started 10 years ago, as Eric said. And John Mayfield, the games creator, has changed roles within the company. He's moved into a research and development role, so maybe that's what he's thinking about. Who knows? We don't, that's for sure. But we can speculate because that's what we love to do. Well, it's been a very nerdy episode, hasn't it, chaps? Maybe this ought to be the Zwiftcast new tagline, home of the Zwift nerd, who's certainly what we do best. So, yeah, that's it. I mean, I just want to say once more, I am grateful to Eric for making himself available to answer what were sometimes quite tricky questions for him. It is good that he comes and talks to the community, and I hope he carries on doing it. Okay, well, that's it, apart from a little any other business. Breaking news overnight. As I switched on my various devices to record the podcast, I noticed that the bots are back. The Pacer bots apparently are back. Obviously not had time to try them yet because I've got an episode to record, but that was a pretty quick fix in the Zwift world, I think, Shane, and probably a testament to just how popular these fellas and ladies are.
They have been very popular. I tinkered with this a while back until I got told don't use bots online. It's against the terms of service. However, they've been very, very popular. It's the group ride that never ends. Yeah. It's the group ride or the bunch ride. You don't have to enter the game to then enter a group ride in the pens and things like that. It's just, it's just there. It's just happening. They're very popular. It's good to see. How long it took them to fix the problem? I was ready and raring to go for a Zwift tip about the Pacer bots and what that's all about, and they disappeared for a week. So I was a little bit sad about that. Now they're back though. I should get filming and I should jump on Coco Cadence or Diesel Dan. But I do know there's no magpies in game, which have been giving me absolute hell out on the road. Yeah. I was out on the bike just before recording and riding along, testing some power meters. It wasn't just me testing the power meters. These birds were increasing my wattage quite a lot, trying to get away from them. None of those in game yet.
I can imagine that. I've seen your pictures. In my part of the world, it's wild boars. I mean, they don't. The thing with wild boars is you might hear them snuffling about in the undergrowth, but they don't jump.
They don't fly.
They definitely don't fly, and they don't kind of leap out onto the road and chase you. But that would certainly increase my wattage for sure. Shane, the Peloton bike knockoff. This was a weird thing, wasn't it? All over the internet. $500 copy allegedly developed in partnership or even by Amazon, according to the company who was posting it, and then 10 minutes later it was gone, and there was rapidly followed by a statement from Amazon saying absolutely nothing to do with us. I smelt lawyers there, lots of lawyers.
Well, we know Peloton have lawyers. I personally know they have lawyers.
It was weird. The whole thing was weird though, wasn't it? Like really weird.
It was a bit strange. Usually companies are quite disciplined in getting information out there with any releases and things. I don't know. Something was fishy there. Something was up. They've either got something up their sleeve that was released too early or Peloton jumped on that and said, hey, no, we've got you for this clause or this clause.
It was definitely fishy. It's a very good word. Okay, well that's it for this episode. Nathan, Zwift Racing League, that's your every waking hour accounted for, isn't it, over winter?
We'll see. I mean, Tuesdays are gonna be really busy. Obviously, we've got 5 zones or 5 time zones to cover. So we've got APAC, we've got 2 European, and then we've got East and West Americas. I am not going to be, I'm not going to be casting every one of them as talent. So that's nice. I'll be in the background for all of it. But, and then obviously Mondays we've got Premier, and it looks like we've got some other stuff around all this too that's going to be kind of doing more sportsy center kind of thing going on, it seems like too. So really cool, and then we've got WTRL TTT on top of it. So it's not just Zwift Racing League. And then Wednesdays, I talked about this at the last Zwiftcast, I do believe we are bringing back some beta stuff too. So, Zwift community test labs type thing is on the radar as well. I don't know how soon, but that has been in conversation. Don't hold me to it, but it is supposed to be soon. But we've all been really, really busy with ZRL. I don't know if you can tell, but the ZRL stuff has been like fast and furious. So I think once we kind of get in a rhythm with that, we can talk more about test labs too. So it's going to be a non-stop winter, that's for sure. When it comes to live.
Yeah, for sure. Busy autumn and winter. Of course, sun coming back with you, Shane, but Llama Lab's still busy, no doubt.
Oh yeah, the sun is arriving slowly, though. It was snowing for 2 hours the other day here, which was just bizarre. But then we're up to 25 or 26 degrees Celsius, so it is happy days. So yeah, always busy at the Llama Lab. More trainers, more power meters, and outside more swooping magpies. Not that I'm worried about those magpies, but I've always got one eye watching behind me for those swooping damn magpies.
That looks scary. That looks really scary in your picture there, Shane. I was like freaked out for you.
When they hit, it's like a warm, sharp, scratchy hug. So it's not as if someone's throwing a water bottle at your head. It's the fright because they're silent until they hit. And you're riding along going, oh, what a nice, oh, look at my FTP. Oh, they boom on the back of the head. And you're like, what just happened? Oh, it's a bird. And then you scratch, there's blood coming out of your ears or your neck or something. Yeah, they get nasty. The ones I'm dealing with are still quite friendly. But it only takes a gust of wind for them to, slam into the back of your head in a different angle and some damage to be done. But look, it's only a few weeks.
Is there anything you could? Well, I remember when I was in Australia, just about at the start of magpie swooping season, actually, Shane, when I came to see you, and I went out for a ride, and I saw this guy. I had to laugh. He'd like, like really long cable ties. He'd covered his helmet in really long cable ties. But when you tie your cables like a good, nerd, you will cut the extended bit of the cable tie off. Well, this guy hadn't. So there were like these 6-inch cable tie spikes sticking up off the top of his helmet. Like, I don't know, about like 50 of them or something.
Yeah. That's a thing. It's a bit of cosplay being an echidna or a porcupine, I guess. I think that's what they're kind of weird people. They make sort of weird noises too and snuffling around looking for ants too when they're off the bike. No, only kidding. There's a lot of theories around how to get rid of them, putting googly eyes on the back of your helmet, because if you look directly at them, they will not swoop you. They're very, very smart. They know that if you're watching them, you can react to them and swipe at them and things like that. So if you look directly at them, they will not swoop. So it's always attacks from behind. Nothing really works. They'll still buzz you. They'll still come near you. They'll still squawk at you. The best thing you can do is just not ride near them, or just if you just put your hand up, they won't come anywhere near you, or your arm up. But that looks pretty funny. I had a lot of car drivers come past me today as I'm being bombed, because there's nothing as scary as being swooped by a magpie, but there's nothing as funny as watching somebody being swooped by a magpie. It is hilarious because they're always from behind. The person's turning. The magpie will always come from behind and attack. It's hilarious to watch. So yeah, you just put an arm up and you just hopefully no one's filming you and getting you on Australia's Funniest Home Videos.
All about magpies, eh? The Zwiftcast. We started with an interview with the chief exec of a billionaire tech company and a $1 billion valued tech company, and we finished with magpie defense strategies.
Game feature. Would you pay for the game feature? Shooting magpie. We're like, no, I'm sorry. That's a new game feature we pay for. No, I'm just kidding.
Well done, Nathan. You found the link. We could have magpies in Zwift.
Oh yeah.
Excellent. Really enjoyed that one, boys. Thanks very much, and talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
See you guys. Thanks.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Usual bit of housekeeping. Just the reminder that whilst we're terribly grateful for the support that Zwift lend to the Zwiftcast, they don't decide what goes in. We do. Thanks again. See you next time.